Lutheran theology is sometimes a little different than other types of Christianity. It's a little more graceful than what you might imagine. I'll give you an example. A week or so, I was scrolling down my Facebook feed and I came up on a post on one of my favorite pages, the Clergy Coaching Network. It's a non denominational page that exists to share good theology, comfort, and encouragement to pastors around the world. And truth be told, I often share something that they post because I generally really appreciate their perspective. But on this day, they posted something that caught me off guard, something that irked me a little. And it was with just a few words, these words: Your baggage may not be your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. They'd quoted somebody named Denise Froman. I'll share it with you again so that you can think it over in your own head. It simply said, Your baggage may not be your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. And well, on the surface, it might not seem that bad. It's kind of nice to hear that all the damage that the world has done to us isn't our fault. That's sticking with Lutheran theology. But that second half, that's what irked me so much. This person claiming that your healing is your responsibility. Your responsibility. Uh, Wait a minute. I responded in the comments section of the post. What about Jesus? I was completely offended that a clergy coaching group would have the audacity to share such a works righteous decision theology with us, forgetting outright that Jesus is the great physician, that Jesus reaches out to those who can't help themselves, healing people like the demoniac who are so filled with trouble that they can't ask for help, healing people like today in our gospel lesson who have the demons speaking for them. Now, if you have ever been on Facebook, you know just how Satan tempts you to write things that you definitely wouldn't say to another person's face. But I was pretty good this time, just saying, what about Jesus? Not completely calling them out for such a perverse understanding of God's action in our lives, or what I saw as that. But no, all I did was ask a simple question: What about Jesus? Because it sure looked like they had forgotten about him, turning your healing into your responsibility. And in true fashion, I checked my Facebook app a few minutes later to see if my opinion mattered to anybody else. There were a couple of responses sharing the same theology, again, not Lutheran though. One person said, Your healing being your responsibility doesn't cut Jesus out of the process. We all have our decisions for ourselves about wanting to be healed and then asking Jesus to help us with that. Oh boy, did she know the right buttons to push. But I didn't think she was truly trying to go against everything I believed, so I calmly, fighting that feeling inside to start a long theological debate, instead just wrote, I guess we just have very different theologies. And I left it at that because I was pretty sure, because I've never seen it happen, though we all try it all the time, I was pretty sure that my rantings on Facebook weren't going to change another person's opinion at all. Darkly humorous that we think it would sometimes, though. Anyways, even if we weren't going to have a Facebook fight about it, which, mind you, saddens me how often that happens even here in our own congregation. Even if we weren't going to have a Facebook fight, the Lutheran theology and the theology espoused by this post and others defending it definitely was not sitting well with me. And today's gospel lesson, one example of many, is a good biblical story to explain why. You see, in the gospel lesson today, we witness Jesus confronted by a very ill man. Not a man who is seeking healing, but a man who says, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us?" This man, like the famous demoniac man, is so filled with illness, so filled with demons, and by that I mean the forces that want to destroy him, that he can't even speak for himself. His baggage is as big as it gets. The troubles of his past are so great that instead of being able to run to Jesus, he comes to confront and fight with Jesus. This man does not ask Jesus to heal him. His demons that control him don't want to be healed. But what happens? Is this man in the Bible, like so many others, responsible for his own healing? No. This man does absolutely nothing but show up in his need. And Jesus responds out of love. Jesus looks at this man whose baggage is weighing him down so much and says, "Be silent and come out of him." And with this awesome healing power, and to the ultimate surprise of everybody around him, this man is healed in a way that he could never have done for himself, in a way that nothing on this earth could have accomplished, no matter the effort. The forces that had taken over this person were ripped out of him by the great authority of the Christ. With a loud voice, the demons come screaming out of him. The man healed in absolutely no way because of his own responsibility. Recalling this story and many others like it in the gospel, where Jesus heals people who have no responsibility in their healing at all, I wanted more than anything to write it in the Facebook post to comments, to change the people's minds, to get them to take down a post that goes against so much of the gospel message, at least from the Lutheran perspective. It would have been a good feeling to start a Facebook fight with them, who from my perspective were indeed wrong. I wanted nothing more than this audience, like the one in our gospel lesson, to be amazed, asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority?" But I didn't do it. The little guy on my right shoulder beating the little guy on my left. If they're not there yet, if they're not able to see just how their words try and limit and diminish God's work and God's grace in our lives, well, I'll leave it up to God to share with them. They themselves need a healing that they don't even know to ask for. I will let God work on them. Better to do that than think that a Facebook fight is ever going to do any good. But we're still tempted to think that it will, aren't we? Thinking about this story of Jesus healing even those who can't call out to him for help, I don't want you to get me wrong. If you call on Jesus, if you go to Jesus for healing, he will be there for you. But so too for those who can't, for those who might want to, but their demons of addiction and disease won't let them. Just think about how many people are out there like this. I want you to know that Jesus is searching them out to heal them, finding you and healing you, strengthening you, and taking the authority of these forces out of your life with his own super authority, like the people in Jesus' synagogue are just learning about today in the gospel. What the Facebook post that I'm still fuming about claims is that your healing is your responsibility. It's about a conscious decision that you make to turn to Jesus or not. And that is a theology that is completely opposite of Lutheran theology. It's known as decision theology, and it's the basic idea that if you do something, then God will respond. If you pray, then God will listen. If you turn to God, God will accept you. And from the Lutheran perspective that focuses so much on God's grace, this is trash. Decision theology is attractive because it makes you your own savior, or at least the gatekeeper to your salvation. In short, it tries to steal the authority of God, claiming God's works can only be done in you if you let them. Again, simply trash. Our gospel lesson today and many other biblical stories teaching the exact opposite of decision theology. I mean, just think about this. Think about that person who is unable to call to Jesus for help, laying in a hospital bed unconscious. We would never claim that God was not there with them, loving them and healing them. And yet this person is completely unable to be responsible for their own healing. I'll just ask you, what about all those who are praying for those who can't call out to Jesus for help? Loved ones begging God to heal those who can't seem to escape their demons. God listens to them. Trust me, God listens to them. God heals people in this world all the time who will never be responsible enough for their own healing. And well, you might have a part in your restoration. You may have some sort of role to play, but it's not as much as you want to give yourself. Egos slip in there and want to make everything about us, don't they? And well, you might even be able to deny Jesus' healing, as Jesus is not forcing himself on you. But don't take the devil's bait that your healing is up to you. That narcissistic thinking is the definition of sin itself, according to Martin Luther. That idea that you're the gatekeeper to your healing, to salvation itself. It's trash. Healing, physical, spiritual, etc. It does not depend on us and our decisions. And if it did, we'd probably be a little too late just about always. But we all want to take the credit, don't we? Even though all of the credit belongs to God. Again, this decision theology, even how attractive of a theology it may be, it is flawed. It not only doesn't give credit where credit is due, but it also blames the victim. If you don't have the healing you want, then you haven't done what is right yet for that to happen. That's ridiculous. And the gospel lesson today demonstrates this well. The good news that the Bible story tells us today is a message that many people, many Christians need to take to heart. When we can't do it, that's when Jesus does. When we are helpless, even our own worst enemy, that's when Jesus does his best work. When our earthly baggage is too much to handle, Jesus finds us and lightens the load. Neither healing nor salvation are up to us. But again, there's lots of Christians that will deny that. They even post on Facebook to promote their views, quite often claiming that this credit is theirs. Lutheran theology is sometimes a little different than other churches' theology and teachings. It's not decision theology. It's not the thought process of if I, then God. It's more the idea that if God does, then maybe we ought to show our gratitude. If God enters our lives and reaches out to heal us when we can't do it for ourselves, then we simply show our amazement and share that story. Jesus' fame grew because that's how the original audience responded. Yes, Lutheran theology, it's a little more graceful than what most people think is just. Jesus gives us more than what we deserve and even what we ask for. Maybe it takes a life that's been healed when it didn't deserve to be to really get what we Lutherans are getting at. Martin Luther's life was like that, you know. And now with Super Bowl Sunday coming up, I put money on it that the man with so much baggage in the story, who was healed even when he came to offend Jesus, he'd be a Lutheran. I'd put money on it because I think he'd get it that healing and salvation aren't up to him. After receiving grace like that, I can't imagine another response. But as a Lutheran pastor, maybe I'm a little biased. After receiving so much grace myself, knowing I still need so much healing that I don't know to ask for, maybe I'm a little biased. Amen.